Perfect. Okay, 3 of 4.
El hospital es...
Okay, we've leveled up, and it is time to pick another language. Morfar är tröttare än vanligt. Maten är färdig. And let's see what we're doing when we get back. Greek. We're doing Greek when we get back. Ben neredeyse her gün okula gidelim. Fun fact. Turkish. Hello, Shakespeare. How you doing? Fun fact, in Spanish, the word for bishop in chess is alfil. And that actually comes from Arabic. Fil. The same word fil as this. Meaning elephant, because the bishop traditionally was to represent elephant units somehow. Similarly, in Russian, the word for bishop is sword, and that also means elephant. Okay. 10-159. Haven't made a huge dent in it, but we're getting there. Okay, gonna do some Chinese now. Nej. Nej. Man. Igen. Jo. 5. Ducks are drinking wine. Bambas. Bamba. Okay, Bambas is ducks. Okay, I have now leveled up. Let's see what the XP situation is now. 10,340 out of 12,500. And as always, viewers can choose my next language for me just with a follow and a $5 to my Patreon. I buy a computer or quack, and here's another example. I like to point these out. For this word for quack sounds vaguely like hogun and the hok in hogun in Korean or waku in Japanese, and that means it is the exact same kind of character. Oh, I see. This is Dikhe Ishaifui, which means do you want. Hello and welcome to Hyperpolyglotting with Elise, where we are continuing on the last day of our Sapphire League speedrun. And the question is not, will I make it into the Ruby League, but whether I will finish Sapphire League in first place. And it is once again proving to be rather competitive. Winnie being the one to beat, as she has been the entire time. So, let's just see how far we can get with that. We're going to start out with some Japanese, of course. And for each subsequent language, I will be using the eye mask of randomization. Though viewers will, as always, be able to choose languages for me by giving me a follow on Twitch or a sub on YouTube and a $5 donation to my Patreon. That crop is okay. Okay, let's starting out with some Japanese, because I was getting some really nice instructional content out of that. I might as well continue with it. Okay.
レストラン。
Okay, audio works. Good. レストラン。メニュー。
メニュー。
メニューをください。
メニュー、please. レストラン。
レストラン。
メニュー。メニュ
ー。
ー。このリンゴはいくらですか？
How much is this apple?
辛いですか？辛いですか？いくらですか？
How much is it?
このご飯は辛いです。このご飯は辛いです。
It's spicy.
これはいくらですか？
英語のメニューはありますか？
英語
のメニュー
は
ありますか？
このお茶
この
は
お茶は
辛い
です
ね。
ね。
レストランにテーブルはいくつありますか？レストランに
テ
テーブル
はい
くつ
ありますか？
このお茶は辛いですね。
This tea is spicy in it. レストランにはテーブルいいテーブルは There's only one well. Could say レストランには but they are strongly encouraging just レストランにありますか？
これはメニューですか？
Oh, forgot to add the word いくつ didn't I?
これはメニューですか？はメニューです。
いや違う、診断書だよ。お前の。あれはいくらですか？ Now, just to be clear, when we say あれ instead of それ, what we're saying is that whatever we're talking about is in fact not near the person talking or the person being spoken to. レストランにテーブルにテーブルはいくつありますか？Ah, fuck, misclicked. Although technically. レストランにテーブルはいくつありますか？Okay, 1 of 6.
1100円です。円、100、1000、100円、人です。
100円です。
It is 100 yen.
1万1000円です。1万1000円です。
11,000
100円です。
1万円です。1万円です。
1000ル100円万
1100円です。
です。
Now, these characters, you will also find, you won't mostly see the characters themselves, but the words that they represent, the Chinese words they represent, you will find in Korean, where sen is pronounced chon, and hyaku is pronounced big. And indeed, n is pronounced won. 1100원. 1100원. won.
円、
る。
る、
100.
100、
man,
万、
which is the same in Korean. It's man. 1000.
1000、
11,100円です。1万1000円です。
これ、繰り返しになるだろう。
1
万
100、1100円です。
部屋には100人います。います。Yeah. I mean, what they're saying is also correct. 部屋には100人がいます。But it is very common to just, when you're using a counter like that, to say just 部屋には100人います。100人いる。
部屋には100人がいます。
部
屋
には100人がいます。1万円です。部屋には100人がいます。Okay,
昼。
その机はいくらですか？その机はいくらですか？
朝ごはんを食べます。
I eat breakfast. Hello, Ether Polyglot. 1000. Or in Korean, 천. Ban. In Korean,
반.
bam.
만,
Man. En.
円、
Won.
昼。
晩ご飯を食べます。
I eat dinner. Or it could also be I will eat dinner.
このお昼ご飯は美味しいです。このお昼ご飯は美味しいです。
How are you doing, Ether Polyglot? この朝ごはんは美味しいです。
その椅子はいくらですか？
How much is that chair? このお昼ご飯は美味しいです。このお昼
お昼
ご飯は美味しいです。
美味しいです。
この朝ごはんは美味しいです。この
朝
ごはんは美味しいです。
Okay, this is actually the first time where there have been multiple possible answers. Because this can be ban. This is also ban.
晩。
Yeah, I mean, even their audio says it actually has it correct that is pronounced pan. It's also pronounced ha, and it's also pronounced pan. But actually, both of those, and in some cases the third one. Okay, 晩ご飯は
ご飯
を
を
7時午後7時に食べます。And that is just an example of where you have to take into account multiple possible word orders because it depends on an emphasis how you place it. They say 午後7時に晩ご飯を食べます, where you're basically emphasizing the time that it's happening. However, if you're kind of following on and the subject is the dinner and you want to just sort of follow on from that, you can also say 晩ご飯を7時に午後7時に食べます or 晩ご飯は午後7時に食べます. There are multiple ways to say that. Well, I don't entirely. I mean, this is apparently individual course creators are putting in the correct answers that they're proposing. So I'm not blaming them actually for not taking all of them into account because sometimes there are huge numbers of them. But I do make sure to point them out because it's important to actually get all that a lot of the time it's really important. And as for a model for language learning, see, there I don't know. I think actually as a primary language learning tool, it actually isn't all that great. There are ways that you could take this and make it something that would work that way. I mean, I haven't actually done anything with Duolingo Stories, but that sounds like they're moving in that direction, actually. I mean, that would potentially be a step in that direction. But as a way of sort of checking your progress when you're learning languages by other means or additional means, I think it's actually quite useful. Why? Why was it founded? Okay. 晩
晩晩円線昼
午前11時にお昼ご飯を食べます。午前11時にお昼ご飯を食べます。
Okay.
10午前11時お昼ご飯を食べます。
I did not know this. I knew the name of the founder of Duolingo. But yeah, I'm familiar with the CAPTCHA. I didn't know that was his thing. Oh, misclicking, forgot the ni. Ah, hell. その机はいくらですか?
午後7時に晩ご飯を食べます。
I eat dinner at 7 p.m. Interesting.
晩
See, and I have to say, it's actually, considering that apparently it's an AI that's kind of doing these sorts of things, it's actually surprising that this is the first time in either Japanese or Chinese, the two languages that use Chinese characters that they have on here, that I have found one where they had two correct answers. And the thing is, they do say correct characters, So I mean, I would have fully assumed that that was actually intended to be, there to be, that there were to be two answers, because there are on here two answers. 午後
午後
7
7
時に
に
晩ご飯を
ご飯を
食べます。
ます。
Yeah, although, I mean, translated, yeah. And that's probably a good thing, because machine translation is for entertainment purposes only. That creates no end of problems. And it's amazing. I mean, the trouble is that most of the people using it only don't know the source language, or they don't know the target language. So they confuse a coherent output with accurate output. If it looks like, sentences a human would say, that it seems to make sense, people think they're getting an accurate translation, and often it's like the exact opposite of what it actually says, or it's like completely unrelated. Particularly when you're dealing with Japanese, for example, or Korean. Those are some of the worst.午前
11
時にお昼ご飯を食べます。There we go. Yeah, I mean, not just song translation, and it's not so much a matter of being bilingual. Translation is a skill in itself. Like, plenty of people who are truly bilingual can't do it. Because it's one thing to have the have two languages in your head and be able to work with them. It's another thing to be able to take a text in one language and manage to convert it into a version in another language that has the same effect, or the closest possible approximation of the same effect on readers as the original. That is a skill in and of itself, and a lot of people don't have it. I mean, you have to develop that, and machines really don't have it. Not yet. I mean, maybe they will eventually. Yeah, interpreting, I mean, speaking of skills in themselves, that is exhausting. I've done it. I mean, there's simultaneous interpreting. That's when you're talking over people, but even consecutive, where you're talking after people, you have to remember exactly what they said. And you have to keep going sometimes all day. I mean, like, I used to do tour interpreting for a while, and that is tiring.
どのテーブルですか？
どの
テ
ーブ
ーブル
ルです
か？
食堂。
食堂。
食単、食費、食欲。
どの椅子ですか？
どの椅子ですか？ステーキは食べ。Actually, I'm sure that this is not that this is not included as a correct answer, but ステーキは食べん is actually a grammatically correct answer. It is the plain level of speech. And is quite colloquial, because normally the plain level would just be tabenai. But in Japanese, in plain colloquial speech, you will often hear the nai in verbs just abbreviated to taben. Tabe masen.
このお茶はまずいです。この
お茶 wa まずいです。
です。
And mazui is an interesting word because it means that something tastes bad, but it's also used, if somebody makes a bad move. Like when my host father in Nagoya was teaching me shogi a very long time ago, every time I would make a bad move, which was basically every time, you go, mazui zo, which is like, you fucked up.
あのテーブルはいくらですか?
How much is that table in the window? Much is that table?
食堂で朝ごはんを食べます。食堂で朝ごはんを食べます。これはまずいです。
Although, see, in a lot of these cases where you have des, you can just leave it off too, and then it's just plain speech. And this is one of the things that they really need to work on, is explaining the different speech levels, whether it's like du und sie in German, du und de, or, polite and plain and keigo speech in Japanese, etc. These are important distinctions, and a person really does need to know them because it is possible to cause some serious misunderstandings. And this model is not really suited to teaching those sorts of finer points. I mean, you'd have to modify it. You could do it, through like the stories, you could potentially do something like that. But you need a model that offers a lot more peripheral detail and context to make it work. How much is that desk? Didn't I just have that? どのテーブルですか? Similarly, you just say どのテーブルか? That is plain speech. です is polite speech.
まずいです。
It tastes bad. Did your friend teach you the kind of standard? Oh, in Latin script, it's totally unreadable. I mean, people who haven't actually gotten all that far in, with kanji do not realize just how hard it is to make sense out of Japanese if you don't have them. Because there are so many words that are phonetically the same, and they mean totally different things. Did your German friend tell you the sort of standard, almost cliche response to somebody using du with you when you don't feel that's on? Yes, kanji's lovely. And it's just totally necessary if you want to try to make sense out of it. Out of what's written, because... you go, haben wir zusammen Pferde gestohlen oder was? So, you say that as a way, so in a sarcastic tone to indicate, what the hell's our background together that you think you can call me du? 食堂で朝ごはんを食べます。I mean, you can also say 朝ごはんは食堂で食べます or 朝ごはんを食堂で食べます。
食堂でお昼ご飯を食べます。で、お昼ご飯を食べます。
このステーキは美味しいね。
This steak is delicious in it. Yeah, das geht auch. Aber halt, der Klischee-Ausdruck, die Klischee-Antwort darauf ist halt, haben wir zusammen Pferde gestohlen oder was? Einfach so in abweisendem, sarkastischen Ton. Hiru.
昼
Shokudo.
食堂
Like, shokudo is an example of where kanji are important. Because shokudo, there are two, I mean, just off the top of my head, two ways you can write shokudo. Both of which have the same first character, which means eating. Shoku. But do can also be written with the character that means way. Shokudo is esophagus. If it's written with the character that is also read michi, or path, or road. Hyaku.
100
And,
円
このステーキは美味しいですね。
and I mean, there are even cases where, like, the phrase that they keep on using, shokudo in, would work. Is you can say, shokudo de asameshi o tabemasu, which means, like, I use my esophagus to eat breakfast. Which is true. Because de can mean the site of something that's going on, a place where something is being done, but it can also indicate the means of doing it. This steak's delicious, isn't it? Oh, bullocks. Okay, I mean, again, that answer is, like, literally identical. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, like, when they're starting out and they don't really know enough Japanese vocabulary to realize how many homonyms there are, how many homophones there are, think, oh, you could just get rid of kanji and it would all be so much easier. And anyone who knows Japanese, anyone who actually speaks is like, holy shit, that would be a absolute nightmare. In fact, in South Korea, where they got rid of Chinese characters, they have a huge number of Chinese loanwords. Often they're the same loanwords as are used in Japanese, it's worth noting. Like, shokudo exists in Korean, it's pronounced shiktang. But there are a fair number of people who actually want to bring the Chinese characters back because it's easier to understand. その机はいくらですか?
このステーキは美味しいですね。
This steak is delicious, isn't it? Okay. 4 of 6. 私は鶏の王様です。理解できません。You are the king of chickens? How did you come up with that phrase, of all things to know in Japanese? 好き。
好き
水は好きじゃないです。
水は
は
好きじ
じゃ
ゃないです。ご飯は
は
熱い
熱い
です。Now,
です
yesterday I was talking about how 熱い can mean more than one thing. At that time we were looking at 熱い as in thick. And here's 熱い again. But with this kanji, it means hot. And in fact, you could actually imagine gohan wa atsui in the sense of thick as well. Omnigalot Forum? No, I don't believe I have.
肉は好きじゃないで
Unilang
す。
once upon a time.
肉は好きじゃないです。
肉は
は
好き
好き
じゃ
じゃ
ないです。
です。
パンが熱いです。
The bread is hot.
野菜は好きじゃないです。
野
菜は
好き
じゃ
好
好
きじゃ
きじゃ
ないです。
お茶が冷たいです。
The tea is cold.
冷たいご飯があります。冷たい
ご飯
ご飯
が
が
あります。
ます。
It's worth noting, gohan is, I mean, and this is also something that Korean and Japanese have in common. The word for, like, just rice is also generalized to mean food. So, tsubetai gohan can mean cold rice, but it could theoretically also be a polite way of saying cold food.
ご飯は熱いです。
The rice is hot. Oh, very cool.
Ham.
What? No, or
Ga.
It can be both. In this case, it kind of depends on the context.
暑い
で
です。
ま
満、
好き。
好き、
円。
暑い、
暑い。冷たい。
冷たい。
水が
冷たい
です。
です。
That is pretty comprehensive.
熱いお茶です。
It is hot tea. お茶は
が冷たい
です。
です。
卵
卵
が
が
好
き
きです。
です。
And now this comes back to what we were talking about yesterday with implied subjects. 卵が好きです does not actually indicate who does the liking. All it says is that eggs, tamago, are a thing that somebody likes. Like, you could use this to refer to anyone. If you were asking somebody, if somebody asked you, like, what does your mother like to eat? You could say, tamago ga suki desu. She likes eggs. And it would be just the same. Whether it's I or someone else depends totally on the context, and it's just a thing you have to get used to in Japanese. 冷たい、
冷たい、満、
好き、
好き、
昼、
昼、
暑い、
暑い、
水は好きじゃないです。You could also just say 好きじゃない。And that's just the non-polite version. Yeah, that includes multiple English sign languages. Or sign languages used in majority English-speaking places might be a more accurate way of saying it. 安い。
安い。
野菜は安いです。野菜は安いです。
魚が嫌いです。And again, just like 卵が好きです from a couple of minutes ago, this does not actually say I. This says, this just indicates that whoever we're talking about doesn't like fish.
お茶が嫌いです。
お
茶が嫌いです。
And another thing to note also is that since Japanese doesn't do articles, お茶が嫌いです can mean I don't like tea, like I don't like any tea. Or it can mean I don't like the tea. Like if you gave, if you served me some tea and something to and some other stuff, and I'm kind of just staring at it with a sort of disgusted look, and you're like, "What's the deal?" And I can just say, "Ocha ga kirai desu." It's the tea, it's the tea I don't like. Yeah, Yeah, exactly. Demonstrative adjective. Which thing are you thinking? Kirai? Well, yeah. You mean if I add a demonstrative? Yeah, you could say, そのお茶が嫌いです. And it would indicate, yeah, I don't like that tea that we were just discussing, or the tea that I just had, or something like that. Or このお茶が嫌いです. And then then it's either the specific tea that has been served, say, or it could mean the specific type of tea. That can create some specificity, but even this in context, it works. And incidentally, with Korean, things operate basically the same way in this regard. It is expensive. It can also mean it is high up.
魚が嫌いです。
魚が嫌いです。甘い. This means sweet, but it can also mean naive. Like, if you want to say that somebody should have expected things to go the way they did, but they figured things would be okay, you could say, あいつが甘いです. あいつが甘い. Yeah, and it means that person is like naive. They don't understand the world. And it's the same amai, literally meaning sweet. ま嫌い安い
高い肉を食べます。高い肉を食べます。
Yeah, exactly. It's true. Although when you say amai in Japanese to mean naive, it's not generally, something you say adoringly. It's more like you should have known better. 甘い安い嫌い昼. And just to save anyone who ends up watching this a minor annoyance that will be quickly corrected. Kirai looks like an i adjective, like amai in yasui, and you might think you could say kirakunai, for doesn't not like. But kirai is actually a noun. Ski and kirai are nouns. They are not. Kirai is not an adjective, and you can't do like kirakunai or whatever like that, or kirakatta. It's kirai datta or kirai deshita.
このケーキは美味しいです。
This cake is delicious. I could go for cake. このケーキは美味しいです。
あれは安いですか?
Is that cheap? このご飯は甘いです。
ケーキは甘いですか?
Is the cake sweet? I assume they're looking for the cake, but it can also just mean cake in general. If somebody is like unfamiliar with the concept of cake and wants to know if cake is a sweet thing, is sweet, they could also say that it identically, and it would also be correct. 高い肉を食べます。この椅子は安いです。甘いパンを食べます。Perfect. Okay. And that's leveling up. And let's see where we are in the ranking climb. I keep saying rating climb because I'm used to talking about this in the context of chess. 35-42. And it is time for a very quick break. But first, we're going to put on the face mask of randomization, and we're going to see where we're going to go next. And where are we going? Norwegian. We're doing Norwegian next. But first, we're going to have a quick break. Okay, that's weird. My 5G Wi-Fi has disappeared.
Perfect. Okay, 3 of 4.
El hospital.
Okay, we've leveled up, and it is time to pick another language. Morfar är tröttare än vanligt. Maten är färdig. And let's see what we're doing when we get back. Greek. We're doing Greek when we get back. Ben neredeyse her gün okula giderim. Uyum. Fun fact. Turkish. Hello, Shakespeare. How you doing? Fun fact, in Spanish, the word for bishop in chess is alfil. And that actually comes from Arabic. Fil. The same word fil as this. Meaning elephant, because the